couple of things I wanted to touch on were just how my study habits have changed since I made that video. Because when I made that video, it was pretty early in first semester, and it's March now of my second semester of first year of medical school. So over those several months, my study habits have changed, not too significantly, but there's definitely been some adjustments that I've made that I think have worked out better in the end, which is why I made them. So really just kind of wanted to emphasize the fact that you can change your study habits so many times throughout school until you kind of just fine tune it and find what's best for you. And I think that's like the most important thing is being able to be that self-aware to where you can figure out what really works for you, and kind of stick with that and run with it. So basically, the moral of that is this is just kind of my experience and what's been working for me, and so I hope that you guys can take any advice you see that might work for you and give it a try, and then kind of integrate it into your own personalized study schedule, and hopefully that will work for you. One thing I also wanted to emphasize was just really trying to be cognizant of what it is that really helps you learn. Because I think it's easy to just kind of go with the flow and just keep trying things without really taking like a second to kind of just step back and really think about what it is that works for you, and not just what strategy it is, but really why that strategy works for you, because it's different for everybody. So really just take that time to like kind of just step back and take the aerial view of your study habits and kind of think about why something works, or and then try and move forward with that and integrate that type of style that really helps with your personal learning style, and integrate that into your study plan. And that's really what I think is the biggest thing, is that there's just so much work to do all the time, and the more efficient you can be with that by maximizing the types of study habits you do employ, that'll just help to cut down on this seemingly insurmountable workload that we have. So the first thing I wanted to kind of brush up on compared to last time is just how I've been kind of using the close style of cards in Anki. And so I'll give a link to my first video too, as you can see, just kind of the basics of it. So for this one, I'll just talk about how I've been doing that. And so with the closed ones, I really like being able to take a reading assignment, for example. So for this is just these are antidysrhythmic drugs that we're doing in cardiovascular right now. And so this was just the reading, and so I just copy pasted it into OneNote because it's easy to highlight and look back and keep everything organized in here. And so the really nice thing is you can just, when you have the text like this, whether it's from a handout or online or whatever it is, your textbook, if you have it electronically, is you can just copy paste things and make a card. So for example, if we're looking at lidocaine right here, and you want to look at the mechanism, and you just take this line: in the heart, lidocaine has relatively greater effects on Purkinje and ventricular cells than atrial cells. And so you can just take that, go to add the card. So I have another screen open, is where it's coming from. Just take that, copy paste it in to Anki like that. And then right from here, you can just, close delete part of it. So let's say, so we can remember what we're talking about later. In the heart, lidocaine has relatively greater effects on Purkinje and ventricular. Let's just do that, and then just do the shortcut Command-Shift-C. That'll put it in brackets. So this will be what's blanked out, and then we can blank that out too. And then again, when you want it to be on the same card, take this number right here and just put it as 1. But if you wanted it to be like the first day you see a card that says in the heart, lidocaine has relatively greater effects on blank, cells than on atrial cells, and it'll show you this. You leave them as different numbers. But if you want them to be both blanked out on the same card, you can put them as the same number, and that'll just make one card. And on that card, you'll see both of these blanked out. So just like that, you can take something directly from your reading and just make it right into an Anki card like that, which is really nice. And so I've really been, this is what I do, 99% of my cards are closed deletion. And then so another thing that I think is kind of handy too is that in my other video, I talked about using making the basic card, which is just a typical front and back flash card. But the easy thing is you can just leave it on closed deletion, and then you can just basically set it up to where it looks like a basic card without having to switch from close, which is just easier. So let's just say we want the front of our card to say, what is the MOA of lidocaine? Like that. And so instead of having a basic card where you go like that and switching, just go enter and just say class 1B antidysrhythmic. Okay, and then you can just go like that and just put that in brackets. So then when you see the card, it'll basically be the same as it'll look the same as a basic card, but then you don't have to take the time to switch to the basic one, and just you can leave it on close all the time, you know. So that's just a kind of handy thing that I like to do. And then also, I did get a subscription to Picmonic too, which it's been super helpful for just the pharmacology mostly, and some of the micro too. You can use it occasionally depending on how hard your school drills you with micro. But the main thing I've been using it for is pharmacology, because they'll have nice Picmonics like this for just a class of drugs, and it makes it really easy, especially starting out when you're first trying to just organize all the drugs in your head. It makes it super easy to have this kind of image to just look back, and it's almost ridiculous how much you remember of it just by having these. I mean, we did antibiotics several 3-4 months ago, and I'll still be able to pull up that image in my head of what the antibiotic it was, and still be able to rattle some of those off, where there's no way that you would be able to remember some of the stuff like that, some of the minute details, without a ridiculous picture like this, So I mean, it does cost a bit of money, but I would say at least try the free trial, especially when you're in pharmacology, and just see how it works for you, because some people it does help and some people don't need it, and that's totally dependent on the individual. So another thing I like to do is when I have a question like this, it's what's the MOA of this drug, and then you're gonna it'll pop up and say that'll be what's blanked out. But then for closed deletions, whatever you put in this extra box won't show up until after you click show the answer. So basically you can include lidocaine is a group 1B antidysrhythmic. So I'd take this Picmonic that I just took a screenshot of the Picmonic from the website and put it in here in my notes just for ease of looking at it. But you can go either take a screenshot or just copy the picture you already have and put it in the extra box. So that way when I do this card, it'll say what's the MOA of lidocaine, and then I'll think about it, and say my answer and click show me, and then this picture will also pop up. So that way not only do I see this answer, but then I also get a reminder of oh, that's right, this is what the Picmonic was. And you can do that with images from your textbook, images from your handouts, whatever you want to put in there to remind you or trigger your memory of whatever drug or whatever pathology you're looking at. And so that's super helpful, and it really does increase your memory of that thing when you can tie it to an image. So yeah, and so I guess we can take a look at a few of the ones I have just to, right. So among calcium antagonists, blank have negative chronotropic effects on the heart. And so this is just a really good example of how you can have this closed deletion. So this is probably verapamil and diltiazem, right? And so again, this is just this really works doing this when you use the closed deletion with Anki, and it's amazing how much it really sticks in your memory. Right. So another thing that I really wanted to emphasize is again, kind of thinking about really taking a step back and thinking about what works. And so kind of going along that is you want to really think about what it is the professor's going to ask you. Like, right, what is it that you really need to know about this drug or this disease, and really try and like word your Anki cards in like a test type question. Or even like you think about once you get into the clinics, like what is it that you're going to need to know about these drugs, right? So, for example, like the professor's going to ask you, the mechanism of action of this drug is, so you need to have a card that has like, what is the MOA of this drug, of all the drugs, because that's such a common question that's going to come up. You need to know those. Then another one, like another favorite, is like, what's the most common adverse effect of this medication? So you need to know common adverse effects. So make Anki cards for those if you need to. Another one that they like to ask is like, the next best step in the management of this patient is blank. Like, what do we do next in this situation? And like that's going to be exactly what it's going to be like when you get in the clinics. And so that's just like a prime example of what they're going to be asking you. So really like think about what they're going to be asking you on the exam and tailor your Anki cards to those, because that's what they're going to ask you. And so you should be able to, answer these kind of questions for any of the subject matter that you're studying. Right, and then of course just try and really keep up with your Anki cards every morning. So I mean that's really where the power of it comes from, is that predetermined spaced repetition that is in intervals that are meant to really solidify those memories. So keeping up with it on a daily basis. You say I haven't done mine today, but I usually try and do mine every morning and just kind of get it out of the way, so you're not putting it off. And that'll really do wonders, because if you do it and then make your cards and then wait a few days, that's not really helping. The whole point of it is that you should make your card, study it that day, do it the next day, and then if you get it again, then 3 days from then, do it again, and then 7 days from then. It's like that. Really, that spaced repetition is where the power of Anki comes from, in terms of really remembering things. The next thing I was going to say is, what I found has really been working for me is like making a schedule. So, when you have a lot of things to do and you're just kind of shotgunning, like a shotgun method of just like, studying this and this and this, just doing whatever, you're a lot less productive than if you make a schedule ahead of time. Like say like at night, right before you go to bed, just like kind of think of what you need to do tomorrow and just kind of make a list of like, I want to look at this lecture, and this lecture. And so what I kind of just like keep a study schedule, and if this works for you, great, do it, and if not, then it's just kind of personal preference. But so I like kind of keeping a list of like things I want to do, right? So like tomorrow I want to watch this embryo lecture of that. So it's like when you have a list of things set that you like want to accomplish, you'll be a lot more efficient, because you already know what you need to do, rather than like sitting around all day like, I could do this next, or maybe I should do this, and kind of like spending time debating on what you want to look at, because there's so many things you could study. But having that structured list of things you need to get done has actually been really helpful, surprisingly. And then also another thing I kind of have noticed or been told and found that really works for me is, think about how Anki works, where it takes the information you put in and it shows you on day one, right? And then it'll show you remember that, and then it shows you the next day, right? That first interval is just a day apart, right? And so, but if you remember that, then the next time you look at it, it's not going to show you again for 3 days, because you already remembered it, So it's like you're solidifying that memory, but every time you remember it, it spaces it out a little bit farther, And so I'm trying to do the same thing with looking at lectures in general. So say you get this lecture on pericarditis on, Wednesday. You go to lecture, or you watch it at home from the like recorded lecture. You watch that on day one. And so try and follow that same spaced repetition, as in like you look at it on day one on Wednesday, try and look at it again on Thursday, and give yourself 1 day, look at it again, and then if you feel comfortable with it, wait another several days and then look at it again, because that's how you're really gonna nail down these topics, is by having that spaced repetition, which is why why Anki works for me and so many other students, is because that spaced repetition is like really that's how the brain works in terms of forming memories. And so what I kind of did is just like made a table in here and just kind of, had the lecture of whatever lecture you're looking at, and try and do the, 1, 2, 3, like preview it. That's day one. The very next day, try and, learn, quote, or like read it or whatever you do for your second pass, flip through the PowerPoints, whatever it is, then give yourself another day or two, 3 days, and then review it again. And either on one of these days, there's usually when I make my Anki cards, either on my second pass or the third pass. And that's super helpful because, when you get that spaced repetition and you're not, looking at this lecture on Wednesday, and then if you were to wait until like next Monday, you've already forgotten whatever you learned on that first day, because you saw it once and then you didn't look at it again, and that short-term memory is gone, which is the same thing as how Anki works. That's why you need to look at it the next day. And it's crazy how well this has worked since I started doing this. Because that's, and maybe that's just some people, but for me, if you look at something on one day and you don't look at it again for 4 days, and you've only seen that stuff once, I'm gonna remember very little of that. But if I look at it day one, look at it again day two, and then look at it again 4 days from then, I'll remember way more than if I wouldn't have looked at it. It's just how the brain works with forming memories. So what I'll do for this is I'll just kind of like put an X by this box, because when you have 40 lectures in like on an exam, it can be easy to like forget or lose track of like, oh, when did I do this, or how many times have I looked at this. So like this lecture, ischemic heart disease, I've looked at 3 times, but this lecture, which was in my opinion less important or less high yield, I've only looked at it once, which is going to be bad, because that's basically like I shouldn't even, I should have done it again, but it happens. But for these, like, it's just easier to keep track of how many times you've looked at it and really try and do that spaced repetition, because it'll definitely help with memory retention. And again, with how much you have to memorize for a single exam in a couple weeks for like 40 lectures, being that a little bit more efficient will, it adds up in the long run, because you're in school with a bunch of other med students who are all smart, and that's the more efficient you are, the better. One more thing is using a timer also along those like little like quirky study habits. Is using a timer has actually really worked for me too, because just having that kind of like having a ticking clock in the corner, whether you use your phone or a free website or whatever, having that kind of like ticking clock in the corner just kind of helps with keeping you on track, like seeing like, oh, 40 minutes has passed, I should be farther, and rather than like just kind of going at your leisurely pace, it'll help. And so it's just another kind of little thing that I found that works for me. And then also looking at different versions or like forms of the material has been kind of helpful for me. So like the first time watching the lecture, you're like digesting the material in like an auditory form, listening to someone else explain it to you, kind of following along. And then the second time, try and like read the material or flip through the PowerPoint or, whatever it is, that second one. But that's a different form, right? Like the first time it's auditory, and the second time you're physically reading it and, thinking about it. And that's a different type of learning, and that'll form like a different type of memory, and then, do PowerPoints, do the textbook, talk to someone, do your study group if that's what works for you. But like going over the material in several different forms, it'll definitely help solidifying those memories versus like just doing just one form, like just only reading. I found, at least for me, that it definitely, you have a much better understanding of the material when you do it, when you study it via multiple different forms. So that's all I have to say for this video. Really, again, just kind of stressing the importance of like finding what works for you. And so just again to show that since that video that I made last time is, my study habits have changed. And so, don't be afraid to kind of fine tune your study strategy and really take a step back and kind of think about what it is that makes a strategy work for you, or, how to best help yourself study. So that's really the most important thing, is kind of finding what works for you and really, composing this personalized study schedule that is going to work best for you, and this is really what's going to help you succeed in medical school. So that's all I got, and so hopefully I'll be able to have some more time to make videos in the future if I have other things that I think other people might like to hear about. I know there were like a lot of topics that I wanted to watch when I was kind of getting in the swing of medical school and right before I was starting, so hopefully I will have some more to come in the future. Thanks for watching.